Hi guys, and welcome back to the Crochet Tour YouTube channel. In today's video I'm bringing you another crochet tutorial, and before I get into it I just want to say happy Christmas to everyone because I'm planning on getting this video up just before Christmas. But yeah, so this video is going to be for Spamton from Deltarune, and this was a request by Just That Awkward Person, so here he is. Then from the side and the back. So yeah, now this can go with your other Deltarune characters if you've made all of them. I thought I'd just show my other ones. You can look through my videos if you want to see the tutorials for those too. But yeah, if you're interested in finding out how to make this, then do keep watching. I do just want to be very clear that this is I would say this is quite an advanced pattern, to be honest. Like, even I struggled with aspects of this, and getting the face details right was a little bit tricky as well, as you'll probably see when I show the clip of me sewing the face on and stuff. So I wouldn't really recommend that you have a go at this if you're a complete beginner. I mean, by all means try, but you may find this a bit of a frustrating experience. So yeah, I would recommend this for definitely advanced level crocheters, maybe intermediate as well. There's quite a few different elements to it, but I do try my best to explain everything that I'm doing in the video and film as much as I can, so hopefully that helps you to follow the instructions. But as always, the written pattern is available on my blog, although I would recommend that you probably do watch the video for this one, because there's some aspects that it was difficult to kind of portray just writing it down. You kind of need to watch how things are done to understand. But yeah, other than that, let's get into what you'll be needing for this tutorial. For this tutorial you'll be needing aran weight yarn in black and white, and I would strongly recommend that you use the same brand if possible, because we will be crocheting a top that we will be putting the body into, and if you use brands of yarn that are significantly kind of different in terms of their weight and their kind of structure, then you may find that the top comes out too tight or too loose. So yeah, use the same brand if possible. You'll be needing some stuffing. You'll need more than this, but this is just to demonstrate. You'll be needing some black embroidery thread for embroidering the mouth. You'll be needing some stitch markers. I'm just using offcuts of yarn. You'll be needing your crochet hook. I'm using 4mm, but you could size up or size down if you're using a different weight of yarn than aran. You'll need scissors. You'll need felt in red, pink, black and yellow. This is for the glasses and the cheek details. You'll need some fabric glue. I'm using Fabri-Tac. You'll need your yarn needle for sewing things down and for doing the embroidery of the face. And then normally I'd say that pins are an optional thing to help you sew things down, but actually this time I wouldn't even say they're optional, because I think you'd really struggle sewing the hair down without pins, so I think that you kind of do need them for this tutorial. But yeah, that's everything that you'll be needing, so let's get into the tutorial. So we're going to start at the head using our white yarn, and to start off with we're just going to do 6 single crochets in a magic circle. So that is round 1. You should just have 6 single crochets at the end of round 1. Then for round 2 we're going to increase all the way around. So that's the end of round 2. You should have 12 single crochets now. And once we got to the end of round 2, I'm now going to just talk you through the next few rounds, because it's just standard increases in increments of 6. So for round 3, you're going to do single crochet increase and repeat that 5 more times to get you to 18 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 4, 2 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 24 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 5, single crochet all the way around. Round 6, 3 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 30 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 7 to 10, so 4 rounds in total, single crochet all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end of round 10 as round 11 is a little bit different. So now we're going to do round 11 together. So to start off with, you're going to do 12 single crochets, and I'm just going to be marking the first stitch just to remind myself where the round started. Okay, so that's my 12 single crochets. Then in the next 3 single crochets, we're going to be doing 3 single crochets into each of those. So it's basically like an increase, but instead of doing 2 single crochets into the stitch, you're going to be doing 3 instead. So 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to do the second one. 1, 2, 3. And then one more. 1, 2, 3. So now you've done basically 9 single crochets across just 3 stitches there. And one thing that I am going to do is I am going to mark the middle single crochet there, so the 5th one. It doesn't have to be exactly the 5th one. If you just mark one of these stitches around this point, then it's just going to help you when you're placing the face details later on. So I'm just marking that one there. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to repeat that same thing again, so 12 single crochets, then 3 increases with 3 single crochets in each stitch, and don't forget to mark that kind of middle increase stitch again. So I'll meet you at the end of round 11. Okay, so at the end of round 11 you should have your 42 single crochets all the way around, and you should have a couple of extra stitch markers that we're just going to leave in for now. So I'll just talk you through round 12, which is just simply going to be single crocheting all the way around, and I will meet you at the end of round 12 and show you the start of round 13 just in case you don't know how to decrease, and then I'll just talk you through the remaining rounds for the head because they're just going to be standard decreases in increments of 6. So I'll meet you at the end of round 12. So for round 13 you're going to start off by doing 5 single crochets. And then you're going to do a decrease. So basically you're just going to repeat that same pattern 5 more times, and that'll get you down to 36 single crochets at the end of round 13. And now I'm going to talk you through the remaining few rounds for the head, which, as I mentioned before, they're just standard decreases in increments of 6. So for round 14 you're just going to single crochet all the way around in each of those 36 single crochets. Round 15, 4 single crochet decrease, and repeat that 5 more times to get you to 30 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 16 and 17, single crochet all the way around. Round 18, 3 single crochet decrease, repeat that 5 more times to get you down to 24 single crochets at the end of the round. Rounds 19 to 20, single crochet all the way around, and then round 21, 2 single crochet decrease, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 18 single crochets at the end of the round. I'll meet you at the end of round 21 as we then need to stuff the head. So I got to the end of round 21, and as you can see I've added some stuffing, so hopefully you can kind of see how the head is taking shape at this point, the two cheeks being where we have these stitch markers here. So I'm just going to talk you through the next few rounds, and as we're doing the head and body combined, we are going to start moving into the rounds for the body as well, but they're quite simple, so I'm just going to talk you through basically the point until we need to split off the body to make the legs. So for rounds 22 and 23 you're just going to single crochet all the way around, and you might need to top up a little bit on your stuffing at the end of round 23. Then for round 24 you're going to do single crochet decrease and repeat that 5 more times to get you to 12 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 25 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 18 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 26 2 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 24 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 27 3 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 30 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 28 4 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 36 single crochets at the end of the round. Rounds 29 to 31 single crochet all the way around. Round 32 4 single crochet decrease, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 30 single crochets at the end of the round. Rounds 33 to 35 single crochet all the way around. Round 36 3 single crochet decrease, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 24 single crochets at the end of the round. Rounds 37 to 38 single crochet all the way around. Round 39 2 single crochet decrease, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 18 single crochets at the end of the round. And then round 40 single crochet all the way around. So I'll meet you at the end of round 40 as we're then going to split off to make the legs, as I mentioned. So I got to the end of round 40 and this is what my Spamton looks like now. So hopefully yours kind of looks the same. If you haven't already, you're just going to want to add some extra stuffing at this point so that you've stuffed the body. But now after the end of round 40, before we split off for the legs, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some extra single crochets until I get to the right hand side of Spamton from our perspective, so not from his perspective. Now it doesn't matter how many you need to do in order to get to the right hand side, just so long as you do get to the right hand side, but I'll let you know how many it takes me. It depends on your tension and stuff whether you'll have exactly the same kind of shape that I do. So 1 2 3 4 5 6, I think it's going to be 7 for me. 7, so I'm just going to check that, and yeah, I would say that that has now got me to the right hand side of Spamton from my perspective. So yeah, so I'd say you probably want to do 7 single crochets, but it might be 6, it might be 8, depending on how tightly or loosely you've crocheted your piece. So once you've got to this point, now we're going to talk through how to map out the legs and then go ahead and actually crochet them. So if you've ever seen a video from me before where I use this kind of technique, you'll know that I like to map out the legs first with some stitch markers before I actually go ahead and crochet them. So I've just cut some scrap pieces of yarn in a contrasting colour, so you're going to need 4 of these if you're going to do the same thing as me. You don't have to do it this way, but I just like to do it this way. So we're going to be basically marking out where the legs are going to sit, and they're basically just going to be 2 9 single crochet circles, and there should be no gap between them. So to start off with, the first stitch marker, we're going to count 4 single crochets after this final single crochet that we just did, and we're going to place a stitch marker into that stitch. So 1 2 3 4, so that'll be this one here. And then we're also going to place a stitch marker into the stitch next to it, because as I mentioned, there's not going to be any gap between these legs. They're going to be, one's going to be crocheted here and one's going to be crocheted here. So then we're going to turn our work and go back to that final single crochet that we just did, and we're going to count back 5 single crochets now, including this single crochet here. So 1 2 3 4 5. And we're going to attach another stitch marker into this stitch, and then finally you're going to attach a 4th stitch marker into the stitch behind the one that you just marked. So now I'll just prove it to you that we've now got our 9 single crochet legs mapped out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then the other leg will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So now we're ready to actually start crocheting the first leg. So for round 1 of the first leg, we're going to start by doing 4 single crochets, which should take us up to that first stitch marker that we placed. And I am going to be using a different colour stitch marker just to mark the first single crochet of round 1 of this leg. So that's the first single crochet, this is the second, third, and then the fourth one into this marked stitch. I'm going to just remove the stitch marker now because once we crochet into it you don't really need that again. So that's that. Then the next single crochet that we do, we're going to be working on the other side of the body, and we're going to be working into the nearer stitch marker of the two, so this one on the left. I am again going to remove it because I know where it is now, and I'm just going to be doing a single crochet into this stitch, trying my best not to incorporate the other stitch marker into it, but if I do, oh well, I can just remove that, so that's fine. And you're going to want to try and pull as tight as you can really on this one to make sure there's less of a gap in the middle, although if there is a gap, don't worry, we can sew that up at the end. So that's the first single crochet, and then we're just going to do 4 more, and that should take us up to the end of the round. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. So hopefully you can see now that we have a 9 single crochet circle. I'll just remove the stitch mark so you can see a bit better. Our 9 single crochet circle started here, and that is the end of round 1 for this leg. I'm just going to talk you through the next, well, the remaining rounds, to be honest, for the leg, because they're not particularly complicated. So for round 2, you're simply going to single crochet all the way around. For round 3, you're going to decrease and then do 7 single crochets, and that will get you down to 8 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 4, decrease 6 single crochets. Round 5, decrease 5 single crochets, and at that point make sure to stuff the leg lightly because you won't be able to get in there after round 5, because round 6 is to decrease all the way around and get you down to 3 single crochets at the end of the round. So I'll meet you when you get to the end of round 6, as we then need to close up that hole, and then we're going to need to reattach our yarn and basically do the same thing on the other side. So I got to the end of round 6, and now I'm just going to cut my yarn, leaving a bit of a tail, and I'm just going to weave it through the front loops of each of the final 3 single crochets from round 6. So 1, 2, 3, so 1, 2, 3, and I'm just going to weave that yarn tail through the center and out through one of those stitches in the leg. Don't pull too tightly or you might misshape the leg. So that is our first leg complete. So now we're going to reattach our white yarn, and we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side, so let's do that now. So with the leg that we just crocheted sitting on our right hand side, I'm going to count back 5 single crochets from this stitch marker, and I'm going to include the marked stitch in my counting. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the stitch that I'm going to reattach my white yarn into. So I'm just going to grab that. I'm just going to reattach that, and now I'm going to do 5 single crochets, and that should take me up to that marked stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th one here. I'm going to remove the stitch marker because I know where it is. So 5, and then we're going to go to the other side, and we're going to work into this marked stitch, so the remaining stitch with a stitch marker in it. So I'm going to again remove that because I can see which one I'm working into, and I'm just going to do a single crochet in here. Again, try and get it quite tight to reduce the gap between the two legs. So 1, and then I'm going to do 3 more single crochets. So 2, 3, so that's 4 in total on this side. And then hopefully you can see, but this is the first single crochet that we worked here. So now we've come back to the beginning of our circle, and we have our 9 single crochet circle like we made on the other side. So that's the end of round 1. And for rounds 2 to 6, you're going to do exactly the same thing as we did for the other leg. So I'll probably put that up on screen now if you've forgotten, but I'm not going to read all of that out again. So yeah, I'll meet you when you get to the end of round 6 on the second leg. So I got to the end of round 6 for the other leg, and I'm going to cut my yarn, but this time I'm going to leave a slightly longer tail because I actually want to use this to do some sewing. This part isn't completely like necessary, it's kind of optional, but I just think it might look a bit better if we sort of sew the legs slightly together so that they stay together rather than kind of being separate like this. So I want them to look more like that. But anyway, before we start that, let's just close up the hole like we did on the other side. So I'm just going to weave my yarn tail through the front loops of each of the final 3 single crochets. So 1, 2, 'I think there's a bit of a knot in my yarn. Let's see if I can pull that through. There we go. 3. Okay, so now that's done. So as I mentioned, if you don't want to sew the legs together, you can stop at this part. You can just weave the yarn tail through to a random stitch and just cut the tail off. But I'm going to be now sewing the 2 legs together and also slightly sewing up the bit of a gap that we have between the 2 legs as well. So let's move on to that now. Okay, so I think pretty much all I'm going to do is just weave my yarn tail through this leg and then back through the other leg to kind of join them together. So hopefully this works. Kind of like this. So now, as you can see, those 2 legs should kind of sit together rather than being so far apart as they were before. Obviously there's still going to be a bit of a gap here, but yeah, that's just the way it is, because I think if you sewed up completely the 2 legs, it might be kind of hard to distinguish the 2 legs, if you see what I mean. It will kind of just look like one big piece. So I think I'm just going to leave it like that, but then I am just going to weave my yarn tail through to the in between the 2 legs, and I'm just going to, this is kind of difficult to show on camera, so sorry if you can't really see, but I'm basically just going to try and close up the hole a little bit here. It's not really the end of the world because the stuffing is white and the yarn is white, so it's not too visible, but I'm just going to close it up a little bit, make it look a little bit neater at this bit. And then when I'm done with that, I'm just going to weave my yarn tail through to a random stitch. And then I will end up just cutting that. So this is what the legs look like now. They've been joined together, and now you can't really see that gap between the 2 legs either. at this point, now that we've got the head, the body and the legs, I would just have a little look at what you've made and have a think about which side looks the neatest, and place a pin to remind you that that's a side where you're going to put the face details, and it'll be important for placing the like top as well, because it has a V-neck on it. So this is one side of my Spamton, and then this is the other side, and I don't know if you can see, but the cheeks look a little bit wonkier on this side, whereas on this side here they look much more even and in line with each other. So this is going to definitely be my front side, so I'm just going to place a pin in the front of the head just to remind me that this is the best side for my Spamton. But yeah, so I think the next thing that we're probably going to move on to is making that little V-neck top, so let's do that now. So for the top, you're going to grab your black yarn, and we're going to start off by chaining 24. When you have your chain of 24, we're going to work 24 single crochets around the chain, starting from the first chain that we did. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to continue until I get to 24, so I'll meet you at that point. So at the end of round 1, you should have your 24 single crochets all the way around. So I'm just going to talk you through the next few rounds. So for round 2, you're going to do 4 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 30 single crochets at the end of the round. Rounds 3 to 4 single crochet all the way around. Round 5, 5 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 36 single crochets at the end of the round. And then round 6 to round 8, you're just going to single crochet all the way around. So I'll meet you at the end of round 8. So I've got to the end of round 8, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do an extra 18 single crochets that's going to bring me to the other side of the top. And the only reason I'm going to do that is because I don't know whether you get this problem as well, but when you start by chaining and then you sort of work in the round after that, you always end up with this kind of ugly bump at the beginning. I don't know whether you can see that, but I don't want that to be at the front. I want that to be at the back. I will try and tidy it up with this tail later, but basically I just wanted to make sure that the V-neck that I'm going to start creating is on the other side here rather than being on the kind of ugly side of the top. So just wanted to explain to you why I'm going to do this extra 18 single crochets now. So I'm just going to do that quickly now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So now that that's done, we're going to actually start working in rows, because as I mentioned, we need to create the V shape at the front of the top. So we need to start working in rows, going around and then turning and then going around, so that we gradually create a gap in the middle of the top. So for row 1, you're going to just turn your work. You don't need to chain 1 or anything. And you're just going to work 36 single crochets in the opposite direction. So I'll just start that off with you. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll meet you when I've done 36. So I've come to the end of the first row. I did my 36 single crochets. As you can see, there's a gap between the first single crochet that we did in the round and the last one that we just done here. So for row 2, we're going to just turn our work. You're not going to work into that single crochet that would be the next one if we were working in rounds. We're going to actually turn, and as I mentioned before, we're going to work in rows. So for row 2, we're going to start by doing a decrease. So just like that. Then we're going to do 32 single crochets, I won't bore you and show you all of those, but I'm just starting with that. And then once you've done your 32 single crochets, you're going to finish off with another decrease, so I'll meet you at the end of row 2. So I've come to the end of row 2. You should have 34 single crochets in your row, and as you can hopefully see, the V shape is starting to widen now. So that's the idea of what we're doing at the moment. So I'm just going to talk you through the next few rows because I think you get the idea of what we're doing now. So for row 3, you're going to turn, then you're going to do a decrease, 30 single crochets decrease, and that'll get you to 32 at the end of the row. Row 4, turn, decrease, 28 single crochets decrease to get you to 30 single crochets at the end of the row. Row 5, turn, then you're going to do 3 single crochet decrease and repeat that 5 more times to get you to 24 single crochets at the end of the row. And then for row 6, turn, 2 single crochet decrease and repeat that pattern 5 more times to get you to 18 single crochets at the end of the row. So I'll meet you at the end of row 6. So at the end of row 6, your top should be looking something a bit like this. And at this point, I'm just going to put the top onto Spamton just to check that it actually fits okay. So if you just slide it on, it shouldn't be too loose or too tight. If it is, you may need to go back and add in a few stitches or remove a few stitches, but hopefully if you're using the same yarn that you're using for the body, it should roughly work out if you follow what I'm doing. So if you look at this, basically we've just about got to the neck now at this point, so we're just going to do a few more rows that are going to add a kind of collar effect. So yeah, hopefully yours looks something a bit like this. Also, when we have added the collar and we've finished off and everything like that, we can glue this down as well to the body so that it doesn't slide around if you're finding that it's perhaps a little bit too loose. So don't worry too much about that. You could even sew it down, to be honest, but I don't think I'm going to go that far with my one. So yeah, so now we're just going to do rows 7 to 9. So for row 7, you're going to turn and do 2 single crochet increase and repeat that 5 more times to get you back up to 24 single crochets. And then for rows 8 and 9, you're going to turn and just do 24 single crochets. And as I mentioned, that should give you a bit of a collar effect. So I'll meet you at the end of row 9, and that'll be it for the top. So I got to the end of row 9, I'm just going to cut my yarn now. As I mentioned, you could leave a long tail if you're going to sew this down, but I'm personally not going to do that, so I'm just going to leave a bit of a tail, just enough for me to kind of knot this on the inside and hide it a little bit. So just trying to find my scissors, there we go. So I'm just going to again put this on him just to show you what it looks like when we have the collar as well. So can kind of squeeze it up a little bit more, but yeah, as you can see, it'll kind of look like this now. And yeah, so once you've got it into a position that you like, you can obviously glue it down, but before I do that, I am just going to hide this tail first, because I think it's a bit easier to do that now rather than waiting till we've glued it down to try and hide it. So I'm just gonna knot this, and then I'm just going to try and kind of weave this through to a point that we won't actually see it anymore. So that should probably be enough, but I will double check that when I've actually put this back on the body. And as well as that, I also want to just tidy up this little bit at the bottom here. So this is optional because it's going to be at the back, so you won't really see this, but I'm just trying to hide this as best I can, and then I'm going to knot this on the inside as well, and I'll probably just leave that tail loose on the inside. Okay, so once this is kind of in a position that you're happy with, we can glue this to the body if you want to do that. So I've got my Fabri-Tac here, and I'm just gonna, now that I've got this in a position that I'm happy with, so make sure you obviously do that first, I'm just going to be gluing down, I'm not going to glue down the collar obviously, I'm just going to be gluing down the rest of the top, and I'm just going to try and make sure that I'm kind of not going too close to the edge because I don't want it to be too visible. Well, I don't want it to be visible at all obviously, but yeah, so I'm just gonna, it's just to keep it a little bit secure. So I'm just going to press that bit down like that. Oh, this glue gets everywhere. It's so annoying on black yarn as well. But okay, I'm just making sure that that V shape is kind of lined up with the middle of the face. If not, you might need to just shift your top around a little bit. I think that should be, maybe needs to go round a little bit more to this side. And then I'm just gonna put a bit of glue around like this. Just make sure that the collar can still come down. I might just put a little bit more at the front. Okay, I'm probably just going to leave it at that because I don't really want to overdo it. But yeah, so once you've done that, I guess the next thing we'll probably move on to is making the arms. So as you can see, I've already made one of the arms here. This is going to be Spamton's left arm from his perspective, and the only difference between the arms is going to be that obviously the thumb needs to be in the correct position, and we do an extra 4 single crochets at the top here to create a kind of shoulder effect. So we just need to make sure that the shoulder is aligned correctly with the thumb on both of the arms. So yeah, so as I mentioned, this is his left arm from his perspective. So now we'll move on to making the right arm together. So to start off with, we're going to make the thumb, and that is simply done by doing 3 single crochets in a magic circle. And then you're going to do an extra 2 single crochets after that. So 1, 2, and then you can just snip your yarn. Don't worry about leaving a particularly long tail. Then what I would do is you can snip this tail on the inside, and then for this one here, I'm just going to weave it through the middle of the thumb, and then I'll get rid of it later on. So I'm just going to literally weave it through like this. Don't pull too tightly, otherwise you might misshape the thumb. So I'm just going to leave this piece like this for now, and then we can move on to making this part of the hand, and then we'll kind of join the two together and then make the arm. So to start off with, we're going to do 4 single crochets in a magic circle. So that's the end of round 1. Then for round 2, we're going to do single crochet increase, single crochet increase. And then for round 3 we're just going to single crochet all around, so that'll be 6 single crochets. So that's the end of round 3. Now we're ready to join the thumb into the next round. So for round 4 we're going to start by doing 3 single crochets around this thumb piece. And then we're going to work 6 single crochets around the other piece that we just made previously. So. Okay, so now we should have 9 single crochets all the way around at the end of round 4, and I'll just count them for you. I'm just going to get rid of this tail because it's getting in the way a bit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9 is that little one there. So that's the end of round 4, and then for round 5 we're just going to do a single crochet to start with, and then a decrease, and then 6 more single crochets. Okay, so now at the end of round 5 we should have 8 single crochets, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We now need to change to black. You could do this using the standard method of colour change, where you just pull the yarn through in your new colour, and that will basically change the colour for you at the end of round 5. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my fake single crochet method just to reduce any visibility of the colour change. So to do that I'm just going to cut the yarn, leaving a bit of a tail. Probably didn't need that much, but leave a bit of a tail. Then if you flip your work like this, skip the next single crochet, go into the one after that and pull that tail through. And then if you go back to that final single crochet from round 5 into the front loop only from our current perspective, and just pull that tail through again, then we've now created a fake single crochet, as you can see here, on top of the existing one, but it just makes it harder to tell where the round ended. So you can kind of push that yarn tail in now. And what we're going to do is we're just going to simply reattach the black yarn, and I'd recommend doing it into the fake single crochet stitch, but it doesn't make a massive difference where you reattach, as we're going to make sure that we get our yarn in the right position before we start creating the shoulder anyways. So don't worry too much if you reattach somewhere else or if you use some different method to colour change. So now that I've got my black attached, we're basically just going to be doing 8 rounds of single crocheting all the way around. So that should be round 6 to 13, I think. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, that'll be round 6 to 13, so 8 rounds in total. Just single crochet all the way around in your black colour, and I'll meet you when you've done that. So I got to the end of round 13 and I've added some stuffing, as you can probably see here. So yeah, do that now if you haven't already. I am just going to hide this tail now, seeing as we've stuffed the piece. I can just push that yarn tail back through the thumb and into some random stitch on the other side like that, and then I can just cut that to get rid of that. So you can do that now as well if you haven't already. But now I just want to explain to you how we're going to do the little shoulder piece. So it's really simple. We just chain 1, turn, and then do 4 single crochets to kind of create a shoulder effect when we sew this down. As you can see, that's what I've done on this one, but I just want to explain how it differs on the 2 arms. As I mentioned earlier, it makes a difference whether you're making his right or left arm. So this is Spamton. So as you can see here, from his perspective, this is his left arm, and this is the one that I already crocheted. So when I turned and did this 4 single crochet extra kind of row here, I made sure that my starting point was in line with the thumb, so perpendicular with the thumb. So when you're making his left arm, just make sure that you do any extra single crochets that you need to do in order to get up to this point here, so that you're in line with the thumb, as I just explained. But for this arm here, we just basically need to make sure that we're doing the opposite thing. So we need to finish off at a point that is kind of opposite side to where the thumb is. And as you can see, mine naturally finished there, so I don't need to do any extra single crochets at all to get myself in the right position. And then when I create the shoulder, which in fact I'll just do quickly with you now to show you. So I'm just going to do chain 1, turn, and do 4 single crochets. And then I'm just going to cut my yarn, leaving a bit of a tail for sewing. So now, as you can see, this arm can go here and the thumb is facing the right way, and then this other arm goes here and the thumb is facing the right way. So basically, just whenever you get to the point where you're doing the shoulder piece, just be careful and have a think about where the thumb should be in reference to the shoulder, and that should help you. I've written all this down as well in my written pattern too. I hope it makes sense, but yeah, effectively you just want to make sure that you have 2 arms where the thumb is in the correct position. So now that I have these 2 arms, and when you've got yours as well, come back and we can sew these to the body together. As you can see, I've sewn down one of the arms now, so I'm going to do the other one with you. So we're just going to try and line up the shoulder stitches with about the part where we started making the collar, like just underneath that, and we're going to sew that down. I'm just going to make sure that I'm getting it kind of symmetrical to the other side before I start. You could use pins, but I'm not going to, so I'm just going to be whip stitching along. Before I go any further, just going to check I'm still happy with that placement. I think that looks okay to me, so yep, I'm going to keep going. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to just sew down 2 or 3 stitches on both the front of the arm and the back of the arm as well, and this will obviously prevent it from like flapping around and stuff, so I'm just going to do that now. So I've done 3 stitches. I'm going to do some on the back now. I'm just going to poke my yarn through to somewhere in the back, and then I'm going to get it into the right position like this. And now I'm going to start doing some of these back loops. Might only need to do 2 on the back, I think. Yep, I think I'm happy with that, so I'm probably just going to leave it like that. You could do some more sewing. You could even sew the arms fully down to the body so that they can't flap up at all like this, but I'm happy with how they look just as they are, so I think I'm just going to leave it there. So once you're done, just weave your yarn tail through to a random black stitch in the back, and then we can just snip both of these tails because I forgot to do the one from the other arm. So there we go. So now we have the arms as well. So now basically all we need to do, we're just going to need to, I think the only 2 crochet pieces left to do is going to be the nose and the hair. And then we're going to need to do some felt pieces and some embroidery for the mouth and stuff. So I think we'll probably move on to the nose next. So the nose looks like this. I'm not going to bother showing you me crocheting it because it's pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to talk you through the rounds quickly now. So for round 1, you need to do 3 single crochets in a magic circle. Round 2, increase 2 single crochets. Round 3, single crochet all the way around. Round 4, increase 3 single crochets. Round 5, single crochet all the way around. Round 6, increase 4 single crochets. Round 7, single crochet all the way around. Round 8, increase 5 single crochets, and then round 9, single crochet all the way around. So you should end up with 7 single crochets at the end of round 9, and then you can cut your yarn, leaving a tail for sewing. And I'll meet you when you finish that, as we can then sew this to the face. I'm going to start sewing this to the face now, so I'm just going to remove this pin that I have here. And to be honest, you probably don't need these stitch markers anymore, so I'm just going to remove those as well. So you basically want to position the nose so that it's pretty much in line with the kind of cheeks and in the middle of them. So I'd say roughly like this, and I'm just going to be whip stitching around to sew that. Also, you might want to add a little bit of stuffing before you finish sewing all the way around, but I don't think you necessarily need to if you're using quite a stiff yarn like I am. But if you're not, you might want to add just a little bit of stuffing. So yeah, I'm just going to finish whip stitching all the way around to get the nose in position, and I'll meet you when I finish that. I finished sewing the nose down now, so this is what it looks like from the side. You can obviously like bend it down a little bit or just have it however you want, but I'm just going to weave my yarn tail through now to a stitch up here and then just cut that. So now that we've added the nose, I think the next thing that I'm going to do is to add the felt pieces and also the embroidery, so like the mouth details with black embroidery thread, and then I'll probably crochet the hair last. So yeah, if you grab your felt now, let's do that. So I didn't bother filming me cutting these pieces out because they're quite standard shapes, but basically what you'll be needing is 2 circles, one in yellow and one in pink, and then 2 slightly bigger circles in black, and then you just need to glue the smaller circles onto the bigger ones. Then in the middle of the glasses there obviously needs to be the little bridge there, so I just did a little rectangular piece, and I'm probably going to just glue that first and then glue the circles on top of it so that I can just hide the edges of that. And then also you need a couple of small rectangles to go to the side of the glasses as well, like that, and then you just need a couple of small red cheek circles as well. So I think what I'm going to do, my order of operations is, I think I'm going to glue down the glasses first, then I'm going to embroider the mouth, and then I'm going to glue down the cheek pieces because I want to glue these on top of the corners of the mouth slightly, so I think it makes more sense to do the embroidery before I glue down the cheek pieces. So yeah, I will film me doing that now. So I've just got my fabric tack and I'm going to start gluing pieces down. just double checking the placement of the like lenses before I glue down the edge pieces, because I'm probably going to do that first. So I'm going to put one here. Just looking at a picture of him to help me a little bit with the placement there. Looks like they should actually be straight. So yeah, more like that. Okay, I'm probably going to glue them down like that. So I'm just going to do these little rectangles first. And then I'm going to glue the lenses. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. So the next thing I'm going to do, as I mentioned, is I'm going to embroider the mouth. I'm probably not going to talk too much while I do this, because I may have to refilm it a bit, because sometimes I have to unpick it and start again if I'm not happy with the placement. But yeah, that's what I'm going to move on to next. Oops, sorry. I think I'm going to do that extra line here separately in a second. I'm just going to have a think about the best way to do it, but I think I'm kind of happy with this shape that I have right now, so I'm just going to do another clip with a different piece of embroidery thread doing the final touch. Okay, I think I'm finally happy with that, so I think I'm just gonna leave it there and stop messing around with it. If you wanted to, you could add a dab of glue here to keep this in place, to keep this part of the mouth like overlapped with this part, so I might just quickly do that, but I think it would probably be okay even without that. So yeah, so that's the mouth. So the other thing that we obviously need to do now is to glue on the little cheek pieces, the red cheek pieces, so I'm just going to do that now with you. So I've just got my fabric tack again. So that's one of them, and I'm just going to do the other one. Okay, so once you've weaved in any ends from doing the embroidery that we just did there, now all we need to do is to make the hair, and then we'll be finished. So the way that the hair works is that we're effectively going to create a long chain. So imagine this is a chain of 30, or well 31 is what we're going to do. And then we're going to create like individual strands coming off of that chain, and it's all going to be worked in one piece. There's going to be no sewing required other than obviously sewing the hair piece to the head at the end. So hopefully that kind of helps you understand what we're doing as we're doing it, because it's a little bit unusual, but obviously I'll show you all of it on video anyway. So to start off with, you're going to do a chain of 31. So I'll just meet you when I've got my 31. So once you've got your chain of 31, we're starting to work that first kind of strand on the hair. So we're basically just going to do a slip stitch into the second chain from hook. Now you could just do it into the front loop here, but I'm going to be working into these back loops here just because I prefer how that looks. So I've done my slip stitch, and then I'm going to do 13 single crochets. I'll meet you when I've got my 13. Okay, so I did my 13 single crochets, and this is like the first hair strand. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to just do 2 slip stitches. So 1, 2, and now we're going to start working the second hair strand. So you're going to chain 15. And then you're going to do the exact same thing that you did for the first hair strand you did. So you're going to do a slip stitch into that second chain from hook. And then you're going to work 13 single crochets down the chain. So I'll meet you when you've done your 13 single crochets. So now I've got my 13 single crochets, and I hope you can kind of see how this is going to work. So this is our second hair strand, and now we're going to do another 2 slip stitches into the original chain 30. So just moving along that chain. Oh, sorry, chain 31, I think it was. So 2 slip stitches. And then we're going to be just repeating the exact same pattern across this chain that we did at the beginning. So you're going to need to do it 6 more times. So basically you're just going to chain 15, then starting from the second chain from hook, do a slip stitch, 13 single crochets, and then do 2 slip stitches into the original chain that we did at the beginning. So that should bring you right to the end of the chain once you've done it 6 more times, and then we'll just need to do 1 final hair piece at the end. So I'll meet you when you've reached the end of the chain here. So I just did my final 2 slip stitches to get back to the beginning of that original chain that we did at the start, and this is what it looks like. So hopefully you can kind of understand what we've tried to do here. So you could finish off and do an extra strand if you want to, but I actually think this is going to be enough for what we need. So I'm not going to chain 15 again and do another strand of hair. I'm just going to leave it here, I think. So at this point you'll want to cut your yarn and leave a very long tail for sewing. It doesn't matter if you don't leave enough, because you can just obviously reattach some more yarn later on when you're actually doing the sewing, but it's a bit easier if you just leave a long tail to start with. So that's what I've done here. So you can see I've got quite a lot of yarn for sewing there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin this in place on the head. So for me, I think this first hair strand that we did is going to be the one that goes at the front, and then the last one we did will go at the back of the head. So basically it's hard for me to show you this without me actually pinning it down, because all the bits are all a bit floppy, but I'm basically going to be pinning down the hair like this at the front, and then I'm going to be pinning down at the back, but I'll show you when I've actually done that, because it'll be easier to see what I mean. So as you can hopefully see, I've now pinned the hair pieces down, so I'll just try and show you what I've done. But effectively I've just added a few pins along this edge here, and then I've made it so that on from our perspective on the right, there's little strands that are going to be sticking out of the hair. So I'm not going to be sewing down the very end pieces of any of the strands that we made. I'm just going to be sewing up to about this point. And I'll just show you from the back as well. So it doesn't look quite as good from the back, but it doesn't really matter, because no one's hopefully going to really be looking at the back anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sewing that down now with you. Obviously I won't film the whole thing, because it will probably take me a long time to sew this, because there's quite a lot of strands to get through. But effectively what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to whip stitch along this edge here. Then I'm going to do a running stitch along this edge here, and that's just because I want to keep the definition of the hair. I don't want to lose it by doing a whip stitch. And then I'm probably just going to do a running stitch along each of the strands like that until I get down to the bottom, and then I'll just do a final running stitch down here. So I'll start off doing the whip stitch with you now. I should probably add an extra pin here as well. And this is going to take a bit of time as well because there's such a long tail too, so there's a lot of yarn to pull through every time, but hey ho, this is the last bit, so if you can manage to get through this, then that'll be good. So just doing my whip stitches here. So I think you probably get the idea. I'm going to whip stitch all the way until I get to this kind of blue pin here, so I'll show you when I get to that point. So I finished whip stitching along the side of the head, as you can hopefully see here, so this bit's now sewn down. Now I'm going to be doing a running stitch for the actual first strand itself. So I'm going to start by going into a black loop and then a white loop and pulling through. That's the trouble when you have a long tail, it ends up getting all tangled, but hopefully that did it. Yeah. Yep, so that was the first stitch, and then now instead of going black to white again, I'm going to go white to black. So I'm going to select a white stitch and then go into the black one. Just like that, and I'm going to keep doing that all the way along. So black, and then white, so yeah, I'm going to do that all the way along the strand, but only until I reach this green pin here. I'm not going to sew down this final little piece. I'm going to leave that sort of flapping about, so I'll meet you when I get to the pin. I finished sewing down the first strand, so now I'm just going to move my yarn tail through to the back of the first strand like this. Sorry. And then I'm going to start sewing down the strand behind it in a similar kind of way. So I'm going to do a running stitch, trying to make it quite close to the one obviously that I've already sewn down. Now you could sew the strands all together, but you might start to lose the effect of there being separate strands of hair by doing that. So I think I'm just going to be doing a running stitch and sewing directly to the white of the head on the second strand. And I'm basically just going to keep zigzagging my way through the hair, doing the exact same thing until I get to the back. So I'll meet you when I get to that point. I've finished sewing all the strands down now, so this is what it looks like. So as I mentioned, I'm just leaving these little bits loose. So this is where I got to on the back. I'm probably just going to sew down once more just on this final edge, just to make it as stable as possible. So I'm just going to weave my yarn tail through to this point here. And then I'm just going to sew this final row down. I'm going to do a running stitch again rather than a whip stitch. Doesn't matter so much at this point because this is at the back of the head. But yeah, I'm just going to go across like this. think this will be the last stitch that I sew. Yep, so that's it. I'm finished with the hair now, I think, so I'm just gonna weave my yarn tail through to some random point in the hair, and then I'll just cut that. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with this other tail here. I'm pulling that one a little bit tighter because I wanted to try and get rid of that little bump that was still remaining there, and that seems to have done the trick. So now I'm going to cut my yarn. And there we have it, your Spamton should be finished. So I'm going to show you a better angle of the finished product now, and that will be the end of the video. So this is my finished Spamton. So here he is, and then from the back. So yeah, I just want to say, if you managed to get to this point and you actually got a finished product, very well done for getting to the end of this video. I'd say this is definitely one of my most involved tutorials that I've ever done, and even I struggled with aspects of it, to be honest. So yeah, just very well done if you managed to get to the end of this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want more Deltarune characters, feel free to drop them in the comments below, or any other requests really, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.